Accra House of Folk have taken a giant step towards winning the Ghana Premier League for the first time since 2009 after beating Asante Kotoko during the Super Clash at the Accra Sports Stadium. Daniel Barney scored the only goal in the game to give the Phobians a 3-point advantage ahead of the remaining 3 games in the ongoing Ghana Premier League season. But one of the highlights on the match day was the euphoria that surrounded the entire game. People were on social media and on the streets of Accra rooting for their respective clubs to win the game. But we asked on this episode of the Ghana Web Fridays debate how we can use the popularity around the game to promote the Ghana Premier League. This is what we'll be discussing here. You can join in the conversation by commenting under the video. My name is Joel Leshend, and we'll go for a quick break. When we return, we start the discussions. Welcome back from the break. This is the Friday's debate right here on Ghana Web TV. To join me do the discussion today, I have Perez Ezuakwao. He's with the Ghana Web Sports Desk. Good morning and thanks for joining me here, Perez.
Well, good morning, my colleague Charlie.
All right. Also joining us via Zoom is Emmanuel Ayamga from Pulse Ghana. Ima, good morning and thanks for joining me.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
Yeah. How was your weekend? It was a great weekend of football. Kotoko against Accra House of Folk. Your general overview of the entire game.
Okay, so on a professional level, it was great. There was a lot of content to cover for my employers. But on a personal level, as a fan, I was a bit down. Overall, I think it was a good weekend of football.
Hello, Ima. Okay.
Joe, can you hear me?
You said on the personal level.
I said on a professional level, I think it was weekend because there was a lot of content to cover for my employers. But then on a personal level, because I'm a Kotoko fan, it wasn't quite as good. But like I said, there was a lot of football over the weekend. First, there was the Women's Premier League final. Yeah. And then there was the big game, of course, between House of Folk and Kotoko. So it was a good weekend of football.
All right, so let me come to Ezra. Did the game live up to expectations, considering the hype before it started?
I think it's a game that you can refer to as being of two halves. We had the first half where I don't think gave us the excitement or the lived up to the billing. Then we had a second half that, for me, went up a bit higher and gave us something that we all love and cheer about. So the first half was not as great as we all expected, and that shouldn't surprise us because the players were under some form of pressure. So in the early minutes, you could see the likes of Razak, Gamma, and all those guys making some mistakes that in a normal game
elementary mistakes
they wouldn't make. But in the second half, they were relaxed, especially Heart of Folk. They were relaxed, took the game to Kotoko and dominated. So it's a game of two halves, not in terms of scores or performance, but in terms of the brand of football that was churned out by both teams.
All right. So at the end of the day, House of Folk won the game. A lot of discussions have been going on. People are blaming Kotoko coach Mariano Barreto. Others are also blaming the CEO Nana Amposa for not taking the step before the game. Now let's talk about the technicalities. Everybody before the game thought that Kotoko, we are going to see Fabio Gamma against Ibrahim Salih for head-to-head in the midfield. But we went to the stadium, we sat behind our screens, and Fabio Gamma was leading the attack for Kotoko. What went wrong for Mariano Barreto, Perez?
With that particular decision, if you watch the game against Carolina United, you wouldn't be surprised because Barreto gave a hint of what he was going to do in the Hearts game. So Gamma played as the forward for Kotoko in the game against Kerala, and I think he scored a penalty, and it worked. So once he won that game, we could all assume that it worked for him. Then he tried it against Heart of Folk. That was a suicidal mistake because he was coming up against two of the strongest, tallest, and toughest players he could have, or the centre backs he could have in the Ghana Premier League, in Moa Hassan and Soa Ado. These are two players who have stood out, especially in the second half of the season. So when you are coming up against them, you need a striker who is equally strong, who can equally bully them, who can equally give them headache and say, especially for Soa Ado, don't join the midfield. Give them a reason not to consistently try to go beyond the center line. And that's not what Gamma did. And you can't fault Gamma because Gamma isn't a striker. Gamma is a typical number 10 creative midfielder who gets the ball, tries to create spaces between the half defense, and give the pass that leads to the goal. Now you're expecting him to score the goal. You're demanding too much of a Brazilian who's having his first season in the Ghana Premier League. You wouldn't have that. So it was a mistake. And even another mistake that Barreto made on the day was the decision to start Adomako.
But Adomako has been in good form for the past 3 games.
No, you will argue that he scored in the FA Cup, but that was against a Division 1 club.
And he scored against Interlice, and he was excellent against...
Interlice have been relegated. He was coming up against the best team in the league.
Okay.
The kind of football Hearts are playing, it's not Adomako's. When Mo Hassan is standing at the back, and it's not Adomako that is good. And the worst thing that happened was that he played him against Fatal, who is equally good. So the striker who should be striking was on the right wing. Then the central attacking midfielder who should be creating the goals was striking. That was a mistake. That was a tactical blunder that Barreto committed for Kotoko. I think it's not so. I mean, they could have taken 4 or 5. They were even lucky that Hearts were profligate on the day, and they took only 1. So.
Okay, let me ask you this question. You've spoken about Fabio Gamma, that he wasn't supposed to lead the attack. Now, you also didn't like the idea that Evans Adomako started the game. So, if you look through the entire Kotoko squad, in the absence of Fabio Gamma leading the line, who was supposed to lead the attack for them?
The guy who replaced Kumi. You could argue that Kumi doesn't give you goals.
Yeah,
but Kumi is the kind of striker that
for the past
in the chief balance we saw a Petri.
Yeah.
He worries defenders, he gives defender head. He won't give you the goals, but that's what JFA can feed on and score a goal. That's what can give you a penalty for Gamma to score. That's what can create a space for Gamma or JFA or them to score. But when you play a false 9, who was not brought up with the mindset of playing in and around the box, you're going to have a problem because he's always going to drop deep, as Gamma did on Sunday, and ensure that the 2 centre-backs of Hearts of Oak have a holiday. The only time they were brought together was when they initiated attacks and took the game to Kotoko.
All right, let me bring you in, Ima. We've spoken about what Mariano Barreto didn't do well in the game. What about Samuel Boadu? What went right for him as he is here to lose against Asante Kotoko?
I think Samuel Boadu was spot on with his tactics. Right from the start of the game, were in control. Like a team that were struggling. They never looked like, aside from the first half free kick that Patrick Asma kicked in and then it was saved by the goalkeeper. I don't think Kotoko even had another clear-cut chance throughout the 90 minutes. So right from the beginning, his team selection, his players were on form, the tactics on the day. And the most impressive thing about Samuel Boadu is how he manages games. The moment Hearts of Oak went ahead, in the last 15 minutes, you saw how he managed the game and ensured that they kept the lead and continued to win. And if you look at the pattern of Hearts of Oak's games that they've won, and that is why they are currently on a 10-game unbeaten run, when they take the lead, it's difficult for you to come back. The Olympics game could be an exception, fine. But in most of the games, in that 10 games unbeaten run that they've gone on, if you look at the trajectory, he knows how to manage games and see out games. And that was exactly what he did against Kotoko on Sunday. Now, let me look at the player selection aspect. I think he was spot on as well. Unlike his counterpart, who played his best player, who is Fabio Gamma, his most creative asset. You saw what Salifu did. Although Salifu wasn't really asking for that. The goal that Haas scored still came from him. That dink that he looked into the box, Haas couldn't clear. The ball came back in, and they to the net. So I think overall it outweighted. They were beaten, they were bruised. And the only thing that didn't reflect was the scoreline. Just like Perez said, it could have been 2, it could have been 3, it could have been 4. And I think 1-0 is a very generous scoreline for Kotoko.
We've been watching this game for God knows how. What was special about this game off the pitch? Ezra?
I think the special thing that was about the game was the excitement, the euphoria around this game was different to what perhaps we've seen in the last 12 years. And it makes sense because this is the biggest Hearts Kotoko versus Kotoko match in the last 12 years. So it generated some form of excitement, particularly due to the form of the two clubs. So we have just 3 goals or 2 goals separating both sides. Hearts of Oak needed to win or avoid a goal scoring draw to keep their place at the top. Kotoko needed to win or have a goal scoring draw to overtake Hearts of Oak. So the peculiarity of this particular game culminated in the excitement that we witnessed on the day.
So in terms, you've spoken about the 2 coaches, and you admit that the 1-0 was not a fair reflection of the game. Going forward, what should Sam Obuedu do if he wants to wrap up the league before they travel to Suga Kope? Because we know that Wafa are always a tough opponent for Hearts of Oak.
You know, when you speak to coaches who have won titles, this is one of the most difficult aspects of their trade because now you've won a big game. The players are getting all their fans. For the first time in years, yesterday we had political shows discussing Hearts Kotoko matches in positive light. You have the likes of Salifu, the likes of Neti getting all the plaudits. How you keep them focused on the main target? It's one of the difficult things that a coach it can happen to you. And that's the task that awaits Sam Obuedu, for him to tell his players and say, hey, we've won the battle, but not the war. There is a bigger task ahead. For 12 years, the family of this great club have not celebrated a trophy. You are just 6 points away from annexing that, from breaking that drought.
And making it a reality.
Don't mess it up. So he has to, it's more of a psychological thing that he has to do now to be able to get the players in tune with the focus, with the target, with the aims of the club. And that's the biggest thing that if you can do it, against Liberty, I don't think Liberty cannot get one over Liberty. Yeah. It'd be smart to have defeated Carolina United 4-1. But you look at this Hearts of Oak team, and you can have the confidence that they can go to Cape Coast and still manage one over Dwarf, as difficult as it will be. So it's how they will psych up the players. That's the move, because you know they are human beings. You've won against Kumasi Asante. Hey, let's go at the party, have some fun. Any girls in Coachella Crab, you just say. Then when you come, so how to keep the players focused on the main target is the biggest issue. And I think that you look at what he's done since he came, and you can trust him. And yesterday I was so happy that Alhaji Akambi in a radio interview.
I was about to.
Alhaji Akambi in a radio interview called not only the players but told the fans that relax, we are not there yet. So they should relax until after maybe they win their last 2 games, and then we see we've arrived.
All right. So Ima, before we go for break, we've spoken about the chances of Accra Hearts of Oak. Now they need 2 games. If they are able to beat Dwarfs and Liberty before they will be crowned champions on the last day in Suga Kope, what should Asante Kotoko do? Is it over for them, or they still have to keep on chasing?
Realistically, I think it's over, but statistically, it's not. So what that means is that Kotoko really need to continue pushing. Now their deal is cut out for them. I mean, what they are supposed to do is to just win the remaining 3 games that are left, and then hope that Hearts of Oak could drop points to 1 or 2 of the other teams. And even if Hearts of Oak loses one of those games, they need just 2 wins from the next 3 to be crowned champions because of the head-to-head. And so I think, like I said, realistically, it looks like it's over for Kotoko. But then, statistically, they are still in it because Hearts have not won the league yet. Hearts could drop points to Ebusua Dwarfs, to Wafa, or to Liberty. They are on form. It doesn't look like realistic, but this is football. It could happen. we've seen a club like United, even as Alex Ferguson, lose a 7-point lead with just 7 games to go. We've seen some of the major capitulations in football where teams have come from behind to win. And like Perez said, I think this is where the psychological aspect of football comes in. Hearts have done the biggest part, which is to beat their main rivals actually, in a game that was a 6-pointer. And now they've opened a 3-point lead. They have a better head-to-head record. Now, this is the most crucial aspect. And I would say the next match is the most important of their season because it could make or make their season. You've won against Kotoko, fine, but there's the possibility that these players will be having that go into their heads and they may think that it's all over. But this is where the coach has to come in and then make sure that they are focused and that they remain focused and make sure that they get the next 3 points. If they get that, now getting another 3 points before their next, they'll need another 3 points in their next 2 games to win the league. And I think that will be a bit easier on them. But then if they drop points in their next game, I'm sorry, but the pressure may be too much for them to handle. And these are players who have never won anything. None of them has won anything with Stars. These are players who have not taken glory before. And so I think it's crucial to get their next win. And if they do that, then I think it will be all done for them.
All right, so Hearts of Oak, they need to keep their head in the game and hope to beat Dwarfs. Dwarfs are fighting to stay in the league. If they lose their next 2 games, it will be difficult for them. This is the Friday's debate right here on Ghana Web TV. We've been discussing the Super Clash and the chances of Hearts of Oak in ending their 12 years trophy drought. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss how we can use the hype to promote the Ghana Premier League. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching the Friday's debate right here on Ghana Web TV. We started talking about the super clash between Accra Hearts of Oak and Asante Kotoko on match day 31 of the ongoing Ghana Premier League season. But for the first time in so many years, politicians, celebrities, and other stakeholders who normally don't talk about football were all over rooting for their respective teams, either Hearts or Kotoko, on social media, on the street, and on radio and TV. Let me start with you, Ima. The publicity we saw on Sunday, was there a conscious effort by the GFA or the clubs to promote this game, or it came naturally?
It was organic. I wouldn't say that the GFA didn't do anything, because I'm sure they did their part to promote the league. But then, organically, just by the fact that Hearts and Kotoko are doing well, as a catalyst to like increasing the kind of euphoria that people get in the lead up to a big game like that. So I wouldn't say they didn't do anything, but then what I can say is that I think organically, by the mere fact that Hearts and Kotoko were the 2 rivals, in this case, both having the same points before the game, that alone piqued the interest of a lot of these celebs, who, by the way, none of them have made, they haven't hidden their support for Hearts and Kotoko. Most of them are out there, they support, but then it's just that when the teams are not doing well, it's going to attach themselves to them. But then I have seen, there was a time where I saw Hearts of Oak going on a tour to radio stations, handing out jerseys to the likes of Bernard Avle and a couple of other people in the media. So I think the clubs, for example, did a lot, because if Hearts was going around dishing out jerseys to people from the embassies, people like Bernard Avle, I mean, all these were actions that were whipping up interest in their game. And so it all coincided, everything came together when they were doing well for the kind of fluid that we saw. And if you looked at the VIP section when the game was ongoing, you realized it was even more packed than the other sections. So I think everybody did their part. But then for me, I think this is the kind of reaction or the kind of patronage that we saw for the game was organic. It was more organic than more of the GFA or anything else. That's what I'll say.
All right. So, Perez, I'll ask you the same question. Before the game, after the game, sorry, I saw a couple of posts on Twitter saying that it was just a case of when you don't have money, you don't have friends. So these people came on board because Hearts and Kotoko are all fighting for the trophy. It was not because the GFA did something special.
I agree with that school of thought. I've been thinking about this too because one of the schooling one of the my research topics is the role of social media in enhancing the popularity of Ghanaian Premier League clubs. So it's something that on Sunday when I was at the stadium, I was excited because I felt like social media has played a huge role in getting us here, and that's one aspect of it because. For instance, on Friday, I was on Twitter having this banter with Ayamga. We were debating whether Moa Hassan was going to be David Luiz on the day, or he was going to be maybe a prime, one of the best defenders on the day. That, in a way, whips up.
And he nearly became a David Luiz. I think the 42nd minute or so.
And so that was one of the things that the fact that the clubs have now bought into the idea of social media, where we've created a huge following, a culture on social media where maybe two colleagues or mates can sit on social media, have a whole discussion about the game. It generates some interest. So if I was going to the stadium on Sunday, one of the things I was looking forward to was to prove right that Moa Hassan will commit a mistake, and I will be right, and Amga will be wrong. Unfortunately, I got it wrong because he impressed on the day. So the role of social media in what we saw on Sunday cannot be underestimated. Because the likes of Opon Nkrumah and their life, he was happy, he took pictures, he was trolling out of the game. Yeah. He and Sam George were on this banter. After the game, Sam George got one over him. Yeah. Obi of Asampara from a couple of other guys. The fact that they can just come on social media, talk about their clubs, it has created that connection where at first, until Heartful spoke on radio, you couldn't get anything from the club. But now you can go to their handles, and every minute, every second, you're getting something there. The other thing that also, for me, led to the kind of excitement or patronage we saw is the fact that the two clubs, by virtue of them being the big clubs in the country, have some form of following. So even on this, that Heartful and Kotoko are not doing well. You expect that at least some 10,000 fans, some 15,000 fans will come to the stadium. The other factor, which for me is the most crucial one, which Ayamga referenced, is the peculiarity of this particular game. So you have Heartful, who for the first time in 12 years have a chance to win the title. You have Kumasi Asante Kotoko, who are locked on the same point as Heartful. And if they want to make the next step to the CAF Champions League, where they think they deserve, they have to win this game. Then you have a Heartful team that has won 10 games or 9 games without losing. So fans are coming to the stadium. Fans are anticipating a good game. Fans are thinking that we have to back our club to win and win us the title. And this game was so huge for Heartful. It was so important for Heartful fans because if they win, the future of Heartful depends on how they end the season. If they win the title, Hearts are going up. If they don't win it, it will be a huge blow because now they have to pick up the pieces.
You suffered for nothing.
Now they have to pick up the pieces and go again. So I think these three factors, social media, the virtue of the two clubs being traditionally the biggest club in the country, and the nuances or the peculiarities around this particular fixture led to the kind of excitement we saw on the day.
Okay, so now the question is, how do we use the popularity we got on Sunday to promote the entire Ghana Premier League?
It's difficult to say because had it been the effort of the FA or maybe the clubs that got us here, you would have said, okay, there is a blueprint where the FA has to do A, B, C, and D to ensure that the other clubs feel the impact of what we have. So it's very difficult. But what this game tells us is that we need our traditional clubs. Okay. We need them back, the Venomous Vipers, the clubs that secondary 11-wise, my very own secondary 11-wise, Okowu United. Because one of the reasons I mentioned a lot is because these clubs are traditional clubs where people in Kumasi feel that Kotoko is an extension of us. So wherever Kotoko goes, Kotoko is represented as Santiman. Now I sit back, I'm in Zuma, and whenever I watch Karola, I feel Karola are representing in Zuma. People in Accra look at Heartful and say Heartful is representing us. Okowu United representing Okowu people. By virtue of that, whenever Okowu are playing, you can be assured that at least thousands of fans, thousands of Okohunians will troop to the stadium and watch the game. So our clubs need to create that connection with the new clubs coming up. Need to create that connection with their areas or towns where they are being, they are operating. So you have Dreams FC, for instance, who have done a great job of making the people of Dawo feel that Dreams
this
is
is
part.
our club.
So that's one of the things. The other thing that they need to do is to keep up the form. If 5-6 years ago, we could not have fought this kind of patron, this kind of excitement, this kind of, fury, because one of the clubs wouldn't have been doing well. But when those two are doing well, what it means is that wherever they go, their fans will come. So, for instance, when Kotoko played Ashgood, when Kotoko played Kerala, there were 3 sets of fans at the stadium. When Kotoko scored, we heard Uku Apimabe were singing. Then when Kerala equalized, we heard Arosa. Hearts wasn't played, but we heard Arosa.
They were there.
Then I'm sure there were Kerala or Nzema people who were in Obuasi who went to the stadium to cheer on Kerala. So there were 3 sets of fans. So you need our clubs to be doing it, because once they do, it has effect wherever they go. Their clubs would want to come, and then naturally it will generate the excitement.
All right. So Ebusua Dwarfs, you represent with the Fanti, so you have to stay in the league. Ayamga, how do you think we can use this to promote the GFA's agenda in bringing back the lab?
I think the lab is already back. I think 2 weeks ago I did an article that after the Uli has game. Part of the article was that I said that there's been a paradigm shift of the love of football from the Black Stars back to the local league. I mean, there was a time where the Black Stars was like the only thing that Ghanaians cared about. If you asked the normal football watching Ghanaian what was happening in the local league, they tell you they didn't know anything about it. But now the euphoria is back. People are back looking at the league. People are interested. People are asking what is happening. They don't just want to know about the score, and they want to see how their clubs are performing, how the league is going, who is on top, who is where. So in general, you can realize that people are getting back to where it used to be. It's not as good as it used to be. All right, but then if you are looking at the euphoria, it's not just about the Hearts Kotoko game. If you go back 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, the Hearts Olympics game also had the same kind of euphoria. So that's why I agree with Perez when he says we need to get our traditional clubs, we need to revamp them and get them back playing in the top level. If Uku United was in the league, if we have Ebusua that's competing at the top, if we have Olympics, we have Kotoko, if you have all these teams, we have Tamale United back and all that, you realize that Ufa will not just hang around Accra or in Kumasi. It will spread across the country. We'll have it in other regions as well. So the first thing is we need our traditional clubs performing, because they are the ones who have the fans. You can whatever you like about the teams that are TTs and the other teams, the modern clubs that are coming up recently. But then if you are looking at genuine and organic fans, it's the traditional clubs that have it. If today Oku United returns to the Ghana Premier League, there are some Kotoko fans that will shift to Oku United because they are supporting Kotoko currently because their main team is not in the league.
Yeah,
you get it. So, like he said, I mean, we need to have our traditional clubs, and it's not just a responsibility of the FA. The clubs also need to pull up. Olympics for a time being were relegation battlers. They were a club that would come into the league and then just go back. But when they had things right, when they started doing things right, they are a club now that can be considered as one of the top 3 clubs in the country. This is what we are talking about. So it's not about just shifting blame to just the FA. There's not so much the FA can do. Because the FA has assumed the role of just organizing the league. I mean, that is what they've done throughout the years, and that is what they are still doing. The FA will not come and invest money into promoting your club or getting fans into the stadium. DS is to organize the league, and that is what they've been doing over the past years. But now, just like Perez said, social media has come. Clubs need to invest in social media. There was a time where most clubs didn't even consider having correct pics of their players on social media. But now, social media has progressed to the extent that it houses the core of your fans. It can make and unmake your fan base, and it can drag fans to the stadium, just like we saw during the Super Clash and during the Manchester Derby. So I think these are 2 blueprints that we can learn from. We've seen how the Manchester Derby went. We've seen how the Super Clash went. If we want to keep up the euphoria, we need to learn from those things. We need to learn from those 2 games and what we did right. So the first thing is to have social media. Second thing I'll say is if we have our traditional clubs back and performing, not just back in the league and then going back to relegation, if they are back and they are performing, definitely things will pick up.
All right, so we need to use social media and also empower our traditional clubs to return to the top flight league in order to maintain the publicity we got on Sunday during the Super Clash. Guys, I'll take your final words, then we'll wrap up on the show.
Well, I think we've had a great season. There were a few issues with the adherence to the COVID protocols, as well as some, a few times where some hoodlums who parade themselves as fans misbehaved. I think this season Premier League has been maybe the best in the last 5 years. The football has been great. Officiating has been better. We just hope that next season will be an upgrade on this one, and hopefully next season Karaola will win the Premier League.
All right. So Ezra thinks that next season will be an Nzema year where the boys from Enyinase can do the magic. They were on top of the league in the first round, but we don't know what happened now. They are 7th on the league table. I am got your final words.
So for me, I think the season is not over yet. There are 3 more games to go, but overall, I think it has been a successful season. We have to congratulate everybody that has played a role in getting the league to where it is now, because 2-3 years ago, we weren't even sure if we could have a league, and now we have a league that is progressing with our top teams performing to the top level. So I think it has been good. It's not just about the teams competing at the top. Look at the relegation battle. Yesterday, when I checked the league table, Interlights are the only team that have relegated currently, but from 10th all the way to the 17th team are separated by just 3 points, which means any of them can be relegated. No one is safe at the moment, aside from Interlights who are already gone. So I think generally it's been very competitive. In the relegation battle, it's picking up. We don't know who will be relegated. The next 2 teams that will join Interlights, and I'm hoping that my Liberty professionals will be able to survive with the next 3 games that are coming up. But like Perez said, generally it's been a good season, and if Asafok win the league, they will be deserved. I don't think anybody can complain about referees or anything. Although the referees could do better. I mean, there have been some questionable decisions here and there, but overall, I think it's been a good season. And the Super Clash is like the biggest example we can use. From the refereeing to the football on display, everything was perfect. So I think it's been good.
That's how we wrap up this episode of the Ghana Web Fridays debate right here on Ghana Web TV. This week we're asking how we can use the publicity we got during the Super Clash to promote the Ghana Premier League and other local competition. Perez Ezwakwa from the Ghana Web Sports Desk joined the discussion. Thanks for joining me here, Perez. And then we had Emmanuel Ayamga from Pulse Ghana. Ima, thanks very much.
Yeah.
You also have the opportunity to add your voice to this conversation by commenting under the video and the stories that comes with this episode. My name is Joel Leshen, and until we meet again, it is bye for now.